Hey, what's going on, guys? This is another episode of the PokeTalk podcast with your favorite people, Nate and Phillip.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Not too much at all. Finally did it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Kind of squeezing in some time for the holidays.
Yeah, I finally obtained the PSA 9 Mario Pikachu. It's been done.
Nice.
So this has been quite the journey. We're not going to ramble on too much, but it's pretty crazy that I finally have it in hand. It's kind of still being absorbed in. I'm looking at it right now.
It is pretty, like all those promos are just way more sparkly than you ever imagine when you see one for the first time. Like, they still just impress me when you see one, hold one in hand, just that little promo hollow.
And I mean, you look at it it really is. I mean, even the background part of the artwork, simple but effective. And I mean, it just kind of reinforces having just a handful of cards to really, really enjoy. Plus, like the binder sets, but it almost feels like for most of the stuff in slabs, I just really want the higher end cards and the cards that I really, really, really like. I feel like having the amount of slabs I did is unnecessary, and I'll probably end up selling some of the slabs I have left, which really isn't a lot, honestly. It's just a handful of cards. So, but we'll talk about that in a future time.
Yep. So, yeah, I was going to mention that. We have 2 episodes planned to wrap up the year. This one, we're going to, kind of in a Christmas spirit, talk about some happy memories we might have or just moments, key moments. Some of them are, not so happy, like the lull in Pokemon that came after all the 90s hype. But we're going to go back in time. We're going to talk about just kind of key moments. Not one moment is not bigger than the other. It's not a list or anything. We're just pointing out some defining moments in the hobby, and then we're going to go back and share some of our own personal stories. Some have been talked about before, but just kind of little hobby appreciation, just like a fireside chat, talking about the hobby as a whole, some of our key memories, top moments for us specifically, and should be a good one. For our next episode after this, it's going to be right at the end of the year, and we'll be talking about our 2024 goals. So another goals video. I always love those. Gives me an excuse. I don't know about you, but it gives me an excuse to look at everything, reset, decide what I want to sell, open.
Which is really what the end of year really provides, right? Like kind of reflecting back on the year, looking forward to the next year. That's really what this time really, really does. Kind of being nostalgic in some ways, appreciative of the things around you. And it's going to be a bit of a recap as well in 2023, like kind of some of the things we've done to get to this point with the collection goals and as we go forward into the future.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I like to do that with my collection in general. I did it this summer when we were going to CollectCon, and I had all those cards to sell. I really don't have much coming back in as of yet that I want to sell. I've graded all my gold stars and stuff, which I talked about. So it's more so deciding what I want to do with those rather than okay, this is an easy sell. There's going to be some big goals. I love the gold stars. I'd like to keep them all. Probably will go after them again one day, but I just, I'm pretty much out of things to grade in my old school collection. So it's all right, now I need to decide what I actually want and how to go forward with that. So excited to talk about that. But this episode's all about the moments that defined the hobby and our top ones. And, before that, we'll talk a little bit about some news. There's not a whole lot going on, but what's the big thing on the news for you this week?
Well, there really isn't much. I know they kind of revealed the Paldea Adventure box, which looks pretty adorable and great for its consumer base. Really seems like they're going after the younger kids, which makes sense, right? And I think the box looks great. But
Predators.
it's not what?
Capital. I said predators. Capitalism.
Yeah,
Taking advantage
and
of them kids.
it is a nice box. I think it'll be great for those that this appeals to.
Yeah, it is a cool little box. Speaking of boxes and products, I saw that they're going to be releasing World Championship decks that are coming out on March 1st. They used to do this every year. Every time there was a Worlds, couple months after, they would do like I think anywhere from 2 to 4 decks. Maybe they did more some years, but it came in like a little box. Nobody really wanted them because the backs of the cards have like a special logo. Like they're
Yep.
not even like real cards. They're like 100% to play with. So like nobody ever really collected those. Um,
It's cool if you won.
yeah,
Like
like you get
it's
your
like
own personal and
yeah.
like the name is like right on front of the box. Like imagine being one of these people and like your name is right there on the front.
I mean, that would be pretty cool. I mean, I would if I were that person, I would buy like they might even give a whole case to these people. I really don't know what they do. Um, but I mean, I would want to have a case and keep it sealed, right?
Yeah,
Just
it'd
just
be
like
cool.
I mean, it won't have like any value outside of sentimental value, but that's cool. Like you got a product name because like I imagine after so long, it's probably pretty much impossible to find some of these boxes. I would think
Hmm.
because who the hell is really trying to sell these things?
Yeah, it'd be cool. Like I kind of want to pick up one of each because I talked to a buddy about this. You know, I have a couple Lorcana decks, which I'll probably go back and buy the singles for since those have been really getting cheap here with the latest restock. Um, I have Magic decks, you know, across all Magic's history, but I never really had Pokemon decks, so it would be cool to go back and like maybe buy some of those World Championship decks because I would strictly only use them for play, and it'd just be kind of cool to have. I just imagine having like this box of like TCGs that I can just whip out and just play with whenever. So that'd be pretty cool. So I might pick these up, especially if they're starting this up again, where they're going to do this every year. It'd be cool just to have some decks to play with. I would rather have a deck like this that is like made to perfection at a championship level rather than buy like the classic collection from Pokemon where the decks suck. Like you're only just buying it because of the old school artwork, you know. So yeah, pretty excited about this. It's pretty cool. It'd be cool if you could like get them to sign like the key card in it or something.
Yeah,
But
I
yeah,
just say there's
they
not
they
the
all have
only other.
special backs.
Yeah, there was a one of the first things I bought. It was just some kids collection. I found out that afterwards there was some stuff there. I ended up actually during the hype ended up like breaking even on that box.
Hmm.
Um, but it was pretty clear the kid kept the best stuff for himself. Like
Yeah.
with the amount of cards, either he bought just a lot of random cards from bulk, which is possible, or there was just like based off of how many cards there were and even like how many hollows and foils, it suggested hundreds of packs being purchased um, from eras as far back as like the platinum era.
Yeah.
So maybe and even there were even some cards from the diamond and pearl as well. So there was a lot of cards from there, and there was a lot of the world championship cards, and I was like, what the hell are these? And then obviously I found out a little bit more, and I was like, oh, these cards are stupid.
Yeah. Pretty sure there's some like a Jolteon Gold Star that someone used for a deck back in the day that has a version of that. Um, Let me look at a Pokemon Gold Star Championship. I think it's the Jolteon. There's a Mew also apparently from the 2008. Um, oh, I forgot about that. The artwork too. Like it's literally a Mew Gold Star, and it has like a silver signature on the card itself of the player. And then the back, of course, isn't a real Pokemon back. It's the World Championships logo. But yeah, there's a few of them out there, so that's pretty cool. Might be something to pick up if you're a complete Gold Star collector there, but there is Mew.
Complete, yeah. So you can get all variants right there, even when it's not worth anything hardly.
Yeah. And there is a Jolteon. I think Jolteon and Mew are the only ones I'm seeing right away, and they were both from 2008. But yeah, that Mew, it's in kind of moderately played condition for $300. There's a PSA 10 Jolteon World Championships, and that's $1,500. So they're relatively cheap, not as much as the real ones.
The fact that it's even that much is kind of crazy, honestly.
Yeah, I think there's a Latias also from 2006, 2 years prior. But yeah, pretty cool cards. It's kind of it's just interesting that they're bringing them back. Hopefully they keep it going like every year here on out, because that'd be cool. I wish they did that from the very beginning. Like if you wanted to play the TCG, you could buy all those and like play a game based in like every era of Pokemon, whatever era you wanted to play in. So that'd be pretty cool. But I guess there's only really two other pieces of news. One of them's really small. With the release of a illustration contest, there was a Creatures post, like the company Creatures. They had like a second post about 2024's Illustrator contest, and they covered the design process behind the illustrations. We've seen a video like this before where we saw someone designing a card on a computer program where it had like the different layers of the card. So like you have like the base artwork, and then you layer over the border and then the text and stuff like that. It's really cool to see. So we have an updated version of that, which I'll have to check out. I haven't checked it out yet, but it looks really interesting. And it's just cool stuff. Anytime you get to see the process of Pokemon being made or printed or something, it's really cool. But other than that, there was a giant break-in and theft in a Tokyo store, and it took about 2 minutes. So
well, but the interesting thing, the fact that it was only 300 cards and they're worth 140,000, meaning he took a lot of ponchos, I would think, right?
Yeah, there'd have to be ponchos, just full arts. Like he knew where the big stuff was.
Yeah, well, apparently the guy was like, apparently all the big stuff that they had was in a safe. So he had, but he had even more in the safe, and that's just what he had out. So I'm sure the person going forward is probably going to invest in a bigger safe.
Yeah, there's a picture of some glass broken and like the empty shelves. You can see some waifus there, so I'm sure it was like a lot of waifu cards. Or if he just picked up 2 of those like battle lilies and like a whatever shiny star V or championship Marnie, like those are worth quite a bit. So
yeah, I mean it looks like he took about 3 cases worth of by 3 cases like in glass. Like if you ever been to like a con, they have similar sorts of glass things to cover it up. This one's more set to be like on a wall or like covered up. I mean like or leaned up, but it's a similar thing. So I mean you're looking at with just 300 cards. I mean what's that an average per? $500 essentially, $450 per.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so,
it's crazy. There's a lot of attacks and stuff, but yeah, it's insane. They even released a article in like 2021. This is like, obviously peak hype when everything was going crazy, and there was a bunch of hackers who wanted some rare cards, so they like held the PokeBeach site hostage demanding for cards. It's like, come on. It's crazy.
All of your cards belong to us now.
Yeah, you can have your site back when you give us the cards. We know you have some.
what's interesting is if you're able to have that sort of that level of tech savviness, you think that you would be competent enough to find a pretty good job. You would
You
think, right?
would think. And a lot of it's not as hard as one would think. Like,
Still going through the process and going through the, I mean, it takes time to learn all that and to be able to know how to do that, and then especially not to get caught. I feel like you take that energy toward and put it towards real life stuff.
yeah. Well, even then, though, like a lot of attacks and cyber attacks are like phishing, where they, people click on a link and, you
I
give
get
them
that,
access, but
but
still got to know like what to do with it. So, yeah, you would think they'd find something better to do, especially like if you know anything about Poke Beach, like it's like a guy who runs it is like super into Pokemon. Obviously, why would he even create a site like this? But I don't think I've ever seen that guy show off any like big stuff. He's always been into playing. So like if you just know like who the guy is and stuff, like he definitely doesn't put himself out there to be like a targeted attack, but there's definitely bigger people. So I don't know. It's just with the popularity going up, you're going to see more crime going up. It's just what happens. This one just happened to be kind of caught on camera and get a lot of news around it. So police apparently showed up like a minute and a half after the security company alerted them.
no,
And
that's pretty incredible response time.
yeah, so they must be like in the heart of like Tokyo and there's just
Yeah.
police everywhere. But
Well, that's how they were able to have that much product. I mean, Tokyo is obviously a huge city. I mean, having
the biggest city.
140,000,
Yeah.
yeah, the biggest, yeah, having $140,000 just in your shelves and you didn't have space in your safe. That suggests one, I mean, you get a little bit of cash, obviously, but you also have a lot of other cards in there, is what that tells me.
Yeah.
Only place that would be able to have that much amount is in a metropolis area to be able to move product like that.
Yep. Yep, it's wild. I just feel for the store owners or just any
Yep. I'm sure he's got
LGS.
insurance to an extent, but I don't know if it's for something like that
Yeah.
and how much it would actually pay out. I'm sure it's a huge loss. Thankfully, that's the cost that they would have sold it for, not necessarily the cost that they bought it. So yes, it is technically a loss, but your actual loss cash wise isn't going to be that significant. So hopefully, I mean, let me rephrase that: is significant, but not as significant,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. So there is that to consider, but I mean, still, I mean, that doesn't make things any better.
I just feel for all the store owners and given the hype of the pandemic, like a lot of them did well, but then like after things have kind of flushed out, like just getting product was so hard and a lot of shops got killed. I almost think today you almost have to like build an online presence and then transition into a store.
Which is something we're definitely going to touch up on at the end of this episode for sure.
Yeah. So it's definitely hard though. Like I know when you first got into a hobby, you're like, oh, it makes sense. Let's just open a store, and I was like, that's just a lot of.
I did look into it, but I didn't have the liquidity to be able to do it.
Even if I
And
did, I mean, just having that amount of cash, like just to keep the store open. I mean, even where we're at, we're in a pretty big college town, but I just still wouldn't be comfortable with it.
there's too many stores that are similar to make it hard to really gain momentum. Like you said, you need to have some semi following on social media and then open up a brick and mortar store.
Yeah,
You need to have that.
the stores that are doing really well now are those people who built had a social media following, built a business through there, and then made their own store. And we've seen that in the past. Like there's a couple guys I know, Simply Unlucky. He's a Yu-Gi-Oh YouTuber. I used to watch him. he kind of did this whole thing like long ago, like before all the crazy hype. I think he's got a different store now, but yeah, that's definitely the way to go about it now. A lot of those people who built solid bases online are, definitely doing better than others now. Before it was like you had a storefront first and then you went online for extra sales. But now, the world we live in is flip flopped. A lot of people are 100% online, and then they go to the stores just for fun, for like extra side stuff. It's kind of like going to the farmer's market. Nobody's saving any money at the farmer's market. it's people be upgrading their prices, and inflation at the farmer's market too. But you're just going for the
Yeah.
experience and like meeting people and buying local and feeling good about yourself. Um, so yeah, it's definitely the way it is. Or a lot of our places around us, like the biggest one, which is Yeti Gaming, probably over by St. Louis.
Or and then there's what's that store in Kansas City? Why am I drawing a blank? Collector, not the
Collector
Collector's
Cash.
Cash. Yep, yep,
Yep.
that's it.
Yep. Those two are pretty big. And a lot of them don't have their stuff there. Like you can't see the big cards. They have like a computer system. Both of them have this. Like you have to look up the card in the computer and then they'll like go get it from the
Yeah, they have it
storage.
in a lockdown room for sure. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty locked down. It's not because they have certain things that they have for folks to come in every day. That they'll have their modern cards. Last time I went to Yeti, they had a little bit of Lorcana. They had a little bit of vintage. They had some. They have the first case you come into usually is the slab area that has their more premium slabs. Now that doesn't include like their really expensive cards, more like their stuff under like a couple thousand. Anything else, you'll have to ask,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that's by design. I don't know what his safe looks like. I don't need to know. I'm sure it's quite incredible.
The system makes sense. It's just kind of annoying going to a store and like you want to just see what they have, and there's very few people who are like looking for this very specific card. And Yeti has them all on eBay, so like we know that, oh, we can look on eBay, see what they got, and then just go to the store if we
TCG
want.
player too. There's a TCG player too. Like they have certain. They don't have stuff on both. Obviously, they got more of their graded cards on eBay. They have their raw cards on TCG player, and we'll come to this a little bit later. But stores like Yeti, good luck. Anything near mint is probably not a PSA 9 or 10. Stores like Yeti will grade their cards that are that good, that are worth it. They're not going to just sell it if it has a chance to be a PSA 10. If it's worth grading, that is.
Mm-hmm.
That's any store that's like that. So if you're buying from these stores hoping for like a PSA 9 or 10 when it says near mint, don't count on it.
Yeah, that's another thing to think of when you go into shows too.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep in mind if the guy selling you ultra modern has a bunch of ultra modern slabs from like CGC and stuff, they probably grade them themselves and they probably
Yep.
look through stuff. Those days might be getting better because a lot of stuff isn't worth grading
Mm-hmm.
like it used to be. The illustration rare hype is kind of dying down, so it's, I don't know, some of those things might be coming up. I need to go back and buy some illustration rares because, I mean, they were cheap this summer. I'm sure they're even cheaper now. I need to start a little stack of those babies.
Because
Um,
those are cards that are like we mentioned before. Every time I go to the local store or the local game store, their illustration rares can be had for dirt cheap, and those are the cards that will go from $1 to $5 to 10 to 25. So it may not seem like that much, and I mean but if you look at the percentage wise, if you got a couple dozen of those where you've only spent $30, and then suddenly you can sell at between 1 and 150, if not more, maybe even 2 to 300. I mean, it's a no-brainer. It's one of those things where if you feel like spending, I mentioned it before, you feel like spending money in the hobby, but you don't feel like spending a lot of money. You can most of those illustration rares. I mean, you can even look through them. Right, are probably PSA 9 or 10 most. And if it's clearly got defects, don't get it. And
yeah,
then that's when even raw or grade, you can just flip them immediately.
A lot of these big
When they
illustration
get to that point,
rares.
I'll say that.
Yeah, a lot of these big illustration rares are going for, like the big ones are going for like $10. So can imagine you could get all the other ones.
Well, the getting the right ones also is important too, right? Like, but get an illustration rare of like a crawdad or corfish. You know, it's going to be different than getting an illustration rare of like a Gardevoir or a Gengar.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's a great time to buy pretty much anything. You can buy the SV Promo 27 with all the um, new starters, Scarlet and Violet starters on that. You can buy that for $5 right now. So just really, really good quality for cheap items.
That's what I probably plan on buying. I probably plan on buying a bunch of illustration rares when we go to KCCon. Maybe some stuff from my Hotsy binder collection, but what we've learned the last couple of years, nearly no place has a decent selection of vintage. It's usually base set to Team Rocket, maybe random Gym Heroes, Neo Discovery, and Neo Genesis, random stuff, usually beat to shit, and it's rarely the hollows.
Yeah.
So it's almost not worth it even. And, you know, we've talked about this before. I think we're going to touch up on it at the end of this episode a little bit, basically how these shows most of these vendors kind of have the same thing, and kind of it's starting to kind of show there's very few vendors that are sticking out from others when in terms of what they're carrying, which suggests a lot of supply of certain items, which again we'll be able to discuss a little later on.
Yep. Some other things that are getting cheap is Lorcana finally. They really hit it hard for the holidays for the first chapter, which is super nice. Been seeing a bunch of starter decks and a bunch of blister packs. Just stopped by Walmart today actually to pick up a little snack and for some holiday stuff tomorrow, and they had 3 rows. I'm sure you've been seeing them, the column rows that they just put on the shelf, loaded with blisters. I sent you a picture of it. I didn't even see how many there were, but I would say
it probably just loaded either that day, that morning, or
the guy was there. Like the guy was stocking, and I've been having some good luck. Walmart's usually like Thursday or Friday around 10.
I would say mid-morning.
Yeah, 10 to noon. The dude, like I've hit him twice in a row now. And that just happens to be when me and the kiddo are out and about making our way back home. So, yeah, it's Thursday or Friday around 10:30 to 11:30. I've caught the guy there twice, and he was stocking a whole bunch of stuff for the holidays. But yeah, they were all blister packs. That's all they had of Lorcana aside from the starter decks. And pretty much people haven't been seeing booster boxes out. But pretty much all the booster boxes have been going to like the LGSs.
Yeah.
And then all the blister packs have been going to the big box stores.
I actually, speaking of Lorcana, I bought 3 D100 boxes at with tax and shipped, about $70 a piece.
Nice.
So yeah, we obviously sold. I actually got the market high for the Madame Mim, by the way. That was pretty incredible. First to market on that card. Unbelievable. I could not believe it. There's a lot of, I don't want to get too much into it because we've already ran so long on the news part, but I think there's still money in Lorcana. It's kind of more difficult with the amount that they're printing, and I expect set 3 onward will be just like this. So basically it's enchanted 10 or bust, or if you can hit the 9 early. Now, how you can go about doing that to get there pretty quick, you know, there's multiple ways. You can either try to buy the cards raw or get lucky. And I don't know what I plan on doing for set 3. I might just buy a couple $100 worth, and if I might get lucky, and then I can double my money, hopefully. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I bought 6 of those packs, and I even looked on eBay. Like they were 6 something there at Walmart. People are selling them for like 8 something. So it's not worth it to people to scalp them. So maybe they'll actually survive on the shelves. Like I said, I bought 6 of them. there was probably like 150 to 200 packs there. There was a lot. And then my friend actually texted me last night from work. She actually found that same situation at another Walmart. So the cards that I found today may have been there since yesterday, but he probably hit that Walmart yesterday and then hit this Walmart today. But keep an eye out. They're out there, and people are overjoyed. It's very nice to get the products. You can buy a booster box right now for $150. They said they're still going to print this until the demand is gone. And I feel like if they do one more, maybe two more waves of what they just did, we might actually reach that point where they start lowering the print run and we'll slowly see the first chapter phase out. So I think the first half of next year through the summer, we might be around that point of time. And it might be a good time to pick up some boxes if you are wanting to long-term some Lorcana boxes. For me, I'm still going to check out my other goals. I really want to work on some binder cards and obviously some grails when I sell some gold stars. But yeah, the time of Lorcana to calm down is finally here, and hopefully they can just keep pumping out and just stay alive now. So we'll see what happens. With that, I guess we should hop into the old main topic, eh?
Yep.
All right, so we're going to talk about some key moments in Pokemon. I guess it'd be better just to kind of start off just talking about the key moments that everyone has kind of experienced in a way, as the hobby as a whole. And then we'll get into some personal stuff. So obviously, I think the first one to talk about is the actual release of Pokemon back in the 90s and the craze, right? And the only thing I really want to mention about this is just the impact it had and the nostalgia factor. The fact that it was so huge, like everyone knows what it was. We don't have to go into detail about it. But just how big it actually got. And if you think of something that's relatively as big of today, it's really hard to come up with something. Maybe Fortnite back in like 2018, when everyone was playing Fortnite and all the kids were talking about Fortnite, and it's still extremely popular. And they've been releasing updates, like they straight up released Lego Fortnite a couple weeks ago, and it's literally like Minecraft in Fortnite with Legos. So like they're just opening people's eyes of all the possibilities. They're basically creating like a game development platform in Fortnite, and the future is bright. So that could be something that is nostalgic to like Pokemon's level. But again, it's not really material items. It's all virtual and like skins and items. So other than that, it's like really hard to pinpoint anything that has had such an impact on a generation, right?
Yeah.
And we've talked about it before, how it's just so hard to replicate that because there's just so many options today. When Netflix was the only streaming service, everybody watched the same stuff. And everybody talked about, did you see this episode? And everyone talked about it at work. That doesn't really happen anymore because people are watching 10 different things and 10 different streaming services.
The streaming services allowed for more niche programming to reach certain target audiences because it was no longer necessarily about just specific hour blocks on primetime TV.
Mm-hmm.
And people can now watch as they want. Because it allows for these niche sort of demographics to be reached, everybody's kind of in their own, they are in their own bubble, right?
Yeah.
Like,
more so now than ever, yeah.
Yeah, like, you can just name, you can name a bunch of things, but it's like how certain people will have no idea, even very popular names and artists or whatever, they'll have no idea who they are because they're so in their own bubble. And it's hard for people to see this because you got to have this sort of awareness, be able to look outside your own situation. And a lot of people either don't want to, don't care, or can't do this.
Yeah.
And some of that is because they're so basically involved in their own bullshit. Is, I mean, honestly the best way to say it.
Yeah, and people are happy there. I mean, it's it's more rare. Like I said, when Netflix was first up, yeah, they basically had big shows. They weren't really big enough to go into those niches yet. So like when a big show came on, everyone watched it like on release day, and everyone talked about it. But yeah, now there's just so many interests.
There are shows that do kind of go past that though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's certain ones where that still happens, but like you said, there's just so many niches and interests now that, someone may have watched that, or someone might be watching something else and saving it for when all the episodes are coming out because there's just so many things to watch.
Folks have began doing that as well now. Yep.
Yeah.
That's how I like to do prefer. Like I because it never fails. I'll start watching it, like it's like for example some of the Disney Plus stuff where it's like week to week. Well, then it's just like by the time you try to watch episode 6, it's like, well, I'll just wait till it's done.
Yeah.
And then it's like I've done this with almost every show. I just don't go back to it.
I like doing that, but I don't even start the show. And then I'll like it's more about a time thing for me. Like I'll wait until the entire season's done, and then if everyone liked the season and like okay, I know this is probably good then. So then I'll go back and I'll watch like it's worth my time, and then I can also watch it like all at once. So the Witcher was a great thing for this. Like season 1 of The Witcher was like one of the best shows to me. Like it was just so good. Season 2 was great, but it had some moments.
Started to fizzle out towards the end there.
Yeah, I still haven't watched season 3 because I waited
Nope.
until it was all out and everyone said it sucked. I'm like, I don't even want it ruined for
Well,
me.
with Cavill also leaving the show, knowing that this is the last season, it's really hard to get into. And then knowing, like, I never read The Witcher, but it's knowing how little they cared about the source material. I don't believe in you have to make a straight shot for shot remake when doing an adaptation. I think that's stupid. I think as long as you maintain the heart of the material, that's the heart and spirit material, that's what's important. However, based on how I understand it, they completely went away from that soul of the source material and did not care. So it's hard for me to care about the actual show or whatever the content is if I know it's just basically they didn't care about the source material and they just crapped out whatever they thought would be a hit. To
Yeah.
me, that's lazy writing.
Well, and it started out good. Like there was a bunch of promo videos where like the writer was actually really involved, and that's why the first season was so good because it wasn't really following like the main books. It was following the tales like leading up to the main books. And so she like really got a lot of credit for like really stretching out for the the outskirts source material, but then also like really sticking to it, like making it true. And then so I don't know where the line was crossed. And I remember even in season 1, he said, I want to do this. Cavill is a huge Witcher fan, like played all the games. He's a big gamer. Or, I don't know the guy. That's what I've seen of him. But yeah, it just seemed like he was really into it and he made a bunch of comments like as long as it's good and sticks to the material, then, I'm in. But maybe that's why he left. There's something weird going on. Weird things happen when the show becomes so big. So you never know. But getting back to Pokemon, like that is what we were getting at. Kids didn't have Fortnite. We didn't have like we had video games, but the
Back in my day,
back in my day we had no video games. We had them, but it wasn't like it was also kind of the same effect to Netflix now that I think about it. There was just so many options. That's when the PlayStation like 2 was huge, when people started getting into PlayStation and then PlayStation 2, like the PlayStation 2 game library is just insane. They were putting out games of everything cuz like games were just really taking off. So that's kind of the effect you had with games. There was just so many options that it was kind of diluted. There are a few games like Grand Theft Autos, Kingdom Hearts for me,
Yeah, I think
those OG games that people as a whole connected with. But
honestly, I think most people of that age group can, you know, identify that first introduction as probably one of the highlighting moments of Pokemon, if not the top moment, definitely among the moments which led to whatever role Pokemon has in their life today. Um, Now that's definitely one of the main moments, but there's a lot of moments within that one as well, besides the introduction of the TCG and the show. You have the games as well. So what made Pokemon interesting as well is it wasn't just one type of medium. It was games, it was TCGs, and it was a show. Now, if you look at what are other formats that had this trifecta to able to reach kids? Also had plenty of toys. Every avenue to reach kids, it was able to accomplish, which is what makes it also very rare to duplicate as well. Even Disney hasn't been able to do it with Lorcana, in part because one, they don't have a game, and two, because they don't have a show. Both factors which I question what can kind of go on long term with Lorcana, but that's kind of besides the point. That's kind of going off on a tangent again. The fact is, a lot of people between the ages of 29 and 32, 33, 34, they have those moments with red, blue. If you're a little bit younger, it was probably gold, silver, but pretty much the same thing because most people were still watching the show, even into the gold, silver era.
yeah, I remember watching it into Johto, but then I faded out. Like
I
I,
watched it into the Hoenn region. I didn't finish the Hoenn region because a lot of times it was on like at 9 a.m. and this is a lot of times I was doing soccer or whatever, so it's hard to keep up to with like every episode. But I mean, I watched it on Saturday mornings. I had like a 13-inch TV in my bedroom, and I watched it on
living it
Saturday
up.
mornings.
Dang.
Yeah, I know, right? That was a big deal too. I had a 13-inch TV.
Had your
That was a huge
own
deal,
TV.
and I don't know. I think I ended up throwing away the TV, which is kind of sad, but. I ended up getting it. I forget where I got that from. It was like a points thing that I forget how. It was like some sort of customer thing, anyways, to my parents, and we ended up getting that for a decently cheap price back then. And anyways, I would watch it in through the Hoenn near the Hoenn Championships. Like I would watch on again, off again. I didn't get to Gen 4 with Sinnoh. I didn't get that far. But I mean, I will watch it for a while, and I think a lot of people were still involved to a point. But this is around when Yu-Gi-Oh became a thing, and then you had a lot of people. We were getting older, going to middle school, going to high school. A lot of people, I think, can attest after this first introduction with the games, cards, whatever. There was a huge lull period of actual life being lived that made people kind of stray. A lot of people stray away from Pokemon during following 2003.
Yeah, that's kind of my second point in the hobby because like you can't mention the craze of the '90s with just also mentioning like the absolute like wasteland that came like afterward. That is kind of the second big moment in general is just going into the EX era and the Pokemon Company taking over. Print runs really went way down. I'm sure the money that they were making from the '90s like was still the thing that carried them on.
Well, and they weren't. The games still did well during this era.
Yeah,
But the
games were doing
TCG,
good. Yeah,
yeah, that's how they were able to get by. The TCG, this was the all-time low print times. Excuse me, print runs for Pokemon, and they would be like that until basically the Black and White era when it started to ramp up. The end of like 09, 2010 was you kind of saw some picking up because a lot of people just love the Sinnoh games. So that I think also some people kind of came back during that era.
yeah. The Sinnoh, yeah, Sinnoh. That's gonna be one of my big moments. Is when I got a DS and played Diamond and Pearl. But
And then Black and White, I think more people got into it too because a lot of folks would identify Black White as some of the best games Pokemon ever made. So a lot of folks got back into it as well, but it was kind of a slow trickle, right? a lot of us for that prime age group and with Black White era, we were what 20-ish, give or take, in college. Maybe just starting,
I think like
just
right in high school or freshly out of high school for me. When did
yeah.
those even
So
come out? Let me see.
I think it was. I assume it was around 2012.
I think you're right, but to the keyboard.
Give me a year. Give me a year.
2010 in
2010.
September, and
Okay.
then North
So high
America
school, yeah. So
2011.
that was my first actual year of college was in 2000. Well, 09, 2010. So my first year, not an associate's degree college, but still. And so there were a couple people that would have been a little bit older than me, maybe just being a senior, whatever. So a lot of people were still kind of busy doing of things with youth. You're living life. You're with friends. You're doing what you're supposed to do. Some people like you went back in the hobby, and they started collecting again. But that was only a small percentage of people, though.
Yeah, it was on the uprise. I feel like Diamond and Pearl and the DS like awoken people, and then it was like a small climb all the way up until we got to Pokemon Go. And I feel like that is really the next point where things went crazy, right? So ever since you had people really die out, and then people like me who picked it up right back. Like I pretty much only skipped around Hoenn, but I was playing Diamond and Pearl like pretty much after high school. We'd still play Ultimate Frisbee a lot and be playing a lot then. Like after Ultimate Frisbee at the park in small town Missouri. We just sit there and battle on our games. But yeah, it was pretty much a slow growth, and if you liked Pokemon, you were still kind of like, oh, you like Pokemon, haha.
Yeah, I mean, even during this time, I would sometimes stumble in and I would buy like a random pack, or I'll look at the Pokemon stuff and like I want to buy stuff, but I don't know where to start. That's kind of where I was around 2011, 2012, 2013. I just didn't know how everything worked with um, Pokemon and how they release stuff. Yeah, and this was the time where I was like a hardcore alcoholic, so I was very mentally lazy on a lot of things, and I didn't really feel like going out of my way and trying to learn stuff about it because I had difficulty concentrating big time on a lot of stuff. Yeah. But anyways, eventually that came to be, and I broke through after years and finally started learning a little more. But a lot of that was because of you. But that's getting ahead of ourselves here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not just Pokemon Go, but the simultaneous release of Evolutions in the TCG. I mean, that is really where a lot of people came in. So you had like the Pokemon Go craze, and then you had Evolution craze, which was a hit because people were pulling the old school artworks. So it was just literally a perfect storm of people playing Pokemon Go and like, oh, I really want to go buy some packs. And then those packs just happened to be Evolutions, and it captured that, that nostalgia of those old school cards. Like, couldn't have been more perfect. You have all these old school Pokemon fans finding Pokemon again, and when they go to the store, the pack that they buy has the old school packs or old school cards of when they collected. Like, that is hook and sinker right there. So caught a lot of people, and it was a great time. Everyone kind of enjoyed Pokemon again. It was fun. The times of being a nerd were over. Those were kind of going away when I was in high school, coming out of high school. But then, like, when Pokemon Go came and everyone was playing it, and it was on the news, and you saw stampedes of people rushing across traffic in New York. Yeah, there's some crazy videos out there. But, yeah, it's literally insane, the amount of influx we've seen from that. And even that wasn't as big as the next key point. So again, a lot of people got into it. A lot of people started collecting on the side, but nobody really took it that seriously until, slowly climbing, building. I think 2018, 2019 was kind of a point where like these cards were already starting to go up again. Kind of grading became a thing again. And then, obviously the one everyone remembers is the 2020 hype and just how crazy it went. Pretty much mirrors or even goes beyond the hype that we had in the 90s. And ultimately, I think we're heading into another key point of the hobby, which is like 2023, which we've been talking about for a while.
Well, 2025, 2026, but I think that's what a lot of people believe as well.
I'm talking about kind of the lull between before then, though.
You mean like 2023 is kind of like 2018? Is that what you're saying?
No, it's kind of like the 2000s, where like we just had this huge hype overproduction of cards, and we're seeing that exact same thing come out here because what's the thing everyone wants now? It's graded cards, ultra modern. So instead of seeing an overproduction of cards from Pokemon that just ran it to the ground, we're seeing a over collecting or over grading problem now. So the same thing is happening, just with different aspects, because the thoughts have changed. But I think this year and potentially next year, we're really heading into a point where, normal set cards are just dirt cheap. They have been. The Japanese promo and special Japanese market has been a little kinder this summer and stuff for bigger cards. But, I mean, if it's not new, flashy, or like one of the pillars of the hobby, like as a Grail promo, things are going down, and things are still going down. So it's going to be interesting where it heads. I think the next couple years are going to be pretty low for that stuff. People are starting to figure it out already, with prices coming down, but I think the next year or two is going to be an adjustment period. Like, we're just going to see so many junk slabs that we're already seeing. There's way more mystery boxes being seen now. You just mentioned to me about a E4 post that we saw when we got on here, like, is the hobby in a lull? And it's funny. It was by an admin, a guy who's very involved in the hobby. And he laid out 4 key points to like look out for, and if these things happen, like, we're basically heading there. It was kind of like one of those. And let me just read some of those that that he listed there, and tell me if we're seeing some of these yet. Okay.
And how I also just want to say, because I've read it as well, I kind of want folks to not necessarily tell us, but identify if these are some of the things we've been saying now for about 6, 8 months, 9 months.
Yeah. So he basically went to a show and said every vendor sold the same kind of things. And that's the problem today. Everyone's chasing the same thing, ultra modern. We've been preaching about anti-ultra modern for a while now. I haven't really been going hard at it, but I am just anti-modern. It just doesn't make sense to me, and people are finally seeing that. But
I'm not anti-modern. We both identified how amazing artwork of the cards are, but we have also said the hype and FOMO and everything surrounding ultra-modern doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't make sense where prices were. And like, another person made a comment on here I'll touch on real quick, like, there's like level X cards that are PSA 10 going for like sub 100. And then there's like modern English where PSA 10s are going for like double that. Like, it doesn't make sense. And there's way more of those cards on the market and way more graded, but that's just what people want. And it's nice that it's that healthy, but prices just don't make sense. But yeah, he said, it don't make no sense. He said people, all the vendors pretty much had the same thing, right? They had vintage English binder with very played cards. So everyone has those, right? It's not, you know, and a lot of them are marked like $5-10 because people might overpay for that holo if they really want it, but really they're worth like $2. A lot of those cards. Modern sparkly binders with Japanese and English gold supporter arts and alts, etc. So yeah, everyone has their modern binder of like $1 to $2 cards that is just full of junk. It's nice and flashy. Nobody really wants it. Nobody really wants to grade it. Maybe set collectors. Yeah. The next thing on the list, everyone had CGC junk slabs, modern 10s, near mint graded vintage. So just seeing an influx of everything CGC. You would not believe how quick I resubmitted and sold my CGC cards when they announced that they changed their grading scale and 9.5s became 10s. I had those things in the box that night and on their way to CGC the next day, and I sold those things immediately. CGC cards are just really weak right now. They're coming down farther just because the influx of them. I like the slab, like the label, I like the new system, but there's just so many of them, and it's really nice deals if you want to pick up cheap graded cards. But yeah, like this guy saying, everybody has them. And then the last point he made that the vendors have is the occasional more valuable slab, but these tend to be priced not to sell.
Which we saw in Kansas City as well. But I will say that was a little bit different with the Japanese promos because we were on the tail end of the hype and people were wanting to see if people would still bite in person and pay up a little higher. But from what we saw even months afterward and what we still even saw on eBay, it was the same way.
Yeah, for sure. Yep, it's yeah, that's the thing. It's like going to the farmer's market, like we said. You're not really getting more for less. It's just the experience. When you go to these card shows, if it's a big card like that, you're not really getting the deal. Like, they have them priced at market, and you know they don't even. A lot of people don't even factor the fees or anything like that. So it's kind of frustrating, right? But he said that's pretty much what people had, and here was his suggestion on, like, it's literally, here's signs to look out for. Mass liquidation of slabs or modern hits. We've mentioned before in the last few episodes, just there's just so many people selling right now. They are just trying to get rid of their junk and consolidating. People have been consolidating all summer. We've been doing that. You know, I've been doing that.
For 2 years.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did at CollectCon this year.
In 2022.
Yeah. So that's just naturally what I do over time. Every once in a while, I've talked about it before. I just get a lot of cards. I want to like consolidate, get a lot of cards, consolidate. Now everybody's doing that. So that's a bad sign because you're also coming in on the tail end of, you know, all the CGC slabs coming in. It doesn't take months to grade things anymore. So the volume is just there, and the volume is insane. PSA even is just getting records amount of cards every day. So it's just wild. But another thing to look out for. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, even the Iono, the English version, PSA 10 is a couple $100. Remember how crazy people were going for that card when it came out with all the FOMO?
Yep, it's wild.
A couple $100 in a 10. Okay.
Here's the other signs to look out for. More mystery boxes. We're seeing those.
We see those. Yep.
Record low auctions. We're seeing those.
Seen those. First edition Charizard.
Things are still moving down. Slabs at 50% the cost of grading them. We have a little experience with that.
We do with the D100.
D100s there.
When I read that, I was like, well, it wasn't Pokemon, but I know that feeling.
Yeah. And then last but not least, more sellers complaining about prices. Buyers are quiet. if we didn't have this podcast, I'd definitely be quiet. But I'm I was buying more in the hype than I ever did prior to that, and I'm buying and spending more per card now than I ever have, even including the hype. So I am buy city going in on some big dogs. So I'm still in it to win it, but I've also haven't been buying shit, the
Yeah.
last 2 years, like a lot of people have.
The
So
whole point, though, of mentioning this is kind of to reflect where we are and how the market has stabilized to potentially kind of like 2018. Are we even approaching potentially something closer to the mid 2000s? I don't think we're approaching something to the mid 2000s. I think we're approaching something like 2018, where there was a dip. 2017, 2018, there was a dip from the market with the influx in 2016, and there's even some comments in here which we've said before where they concur 2025, 2026, as we approach the 30th anniversary of Pokemon. That's when you should see another uptick, and that's what we kind of all agree. And if you look at history, it suggests that's a very solid assessment. If you look at 2016, coincides with the 20th anniversary. Pokemon in 2020, yes, pandemic, but also with the 25th anniversary. Remember how crazy celebrations went?
hmm and we talked about this before too, but as time goes on and you stretch out Pokemon's history, there's too many cards to like, say everything's going up. But it's like with baseball, you stretch back baseball's history and how expensive those cards are. We have some cards like that in Pokemon, but Pokemon is like still very young. But the greats are the ones that stand up. So I think if we look ahead 40 years and we could pick a card that is going to be worth anything if Pokemon is still around, which by the way, one of the main Pokemon like press people came out and made a video that they basically said Pokemon's staying for hundreds of years.
Yeah,
So they're trucking forward.
yeah.
But yeah, these key cards are going to stand out. Like we haven't really seen many new promos kind of take the cake. So like a lot of those 2016 to 2019 promos are probably going to stand out for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of, first edition Charizard, obviously, he's going to be standing out for a long time. So when I see all these cards, and like Gold Stars, I personally think also, but they're just like too niche, and I would
I
love
think
to
you
keep
have.
them. But it makes more sense to like put something like that into a Charizard.
Well, I think you're not going to maybe see. Well, we saw kind of what the first edition Lugia went through, right? I think that there's a 10 that just sold for like $22,000. Remember what did one sell during the pandemic? It was around six figures, right?
I can't remember. I want to say like
It was
50
like
or
110,000. I
60K.
thought it was like 110,000. Maybe I'm mistaken.
I really don't know. Anytime I
Either
mention
way,
numbers in the last 2 years, like I could be 100% wrong because everything was just such a blur. Like the
but
numbers just went up and down so much.
but the Lugia is another card that's would also go up. It's not just necessarily the Mickey Mantle from the mid '50s that's worth a lot from that era. There are a lot of cards from that era that are worth tens of thousands of dollars, maybe not, and the right grades, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it's not that's just what most folks are going to know and be familiar with is the Mickey Mantle rookie. Um, but there's definitely a lot more. If you go back even further, there was a Babe Ruth one that just sold for 7.5 million.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, a Babe Ruth rookie from 1914. Now that's obviously even older, but the same concept kind of works, right? There is only so much in good condition from that era. Well, there's like what 130 PSA 10 first edition Charizards, and the nines isn't too much more. And if it goes, obviously, once you get down to like rough play shape, it changes substantially because there's still tens of thousands of the first edition cards, even in uh, overall. But so it's probably not going to kind of be at that same point. I don't know what it, like a roughly played one of the behaviors would go for, but I would assume just a roughly played authenticated one probably goes for 10 to 20,000. I would assume at least.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, it's kind of hard to think about that and apply it to Pokemon because, like, who's going to stick out, in the long term? And there was a sports card investor video on YouTube I just watched earlier. They were talking about the same thing with modern sports. Like, everyone wants the new and flashy, and it's cool to have, like, the card of the player you're watching on TV in that moment. But there's so many, like, the NFL in particular has so many potential superstars. It's kind of hard to pick one. Like, obviously Tom Brady was the greatest of all time, but like now you have, Patrick Mahomes is probably one of the top guys.
Kelsey.
Yeah, you got Kelsey, you got Trevor Lawrence, you got all these new guys coming up who've like taken the place of like, the
Drew Brees, Peyton Manning.
Yeah, they kind of, well, even still, like, who was it? It was for Green Bay. I can't remember the guy's name.
Aaron Rodgers.
Well, when Aaron Rodgers got traded, their new quarterback, he's been doing really well the last few games.
I barely pay attention. I'm the NFL is so saturated. Even if you don't consume any of the media, it's impossible not to get away from it.
Yeah,
because like I follow Sports Center and stuff, obviously for like MLB stuff and just overall, other sports stuff. I mean, you see information on it. You see crap about it constantly. And then the way Facebook and, even Reddit algorithm works, it's right there in your face, whether you want to be with it or not.
Yeah. There's just, like, long story short, there's just so many potential stars. And I think it's, like, a lot of the media hype, like you just said, around these stars. It just builds more hype, but yeah, there's just so many potentials out there, like Matthew Stafford and, just so many that are potential stars. So everyone's collecting these cards, but like if you stretch it out, like can they continue to be doing great? Or will Patrick Mahomes fall off a cliff and then this new guy in Green Bay, will he be the next Tom Brady level superstar? So you have a lot of stars, but we haven't really seen like a superstar kind of, dominate.
Well, I think that's Patrick Mahomes, but
not if you've been watching this year. He's been.
I really don't, but even Brady didn't have the best years too.
Yeah, so it's like identifying those superstars, and obviously first edition base set Charizard is a superstar. So there's definitely some other ones like Scream promos, Mario's, superstars.
Pachos.
So, what will that look like? What are the alt arts going to look like when there's hundreds of alt arts? Like Umbreon is a star, but I don't think he'll ever be like superstar because there's
too much.
There's so many that are kind of close. Like
yeah, well, I think they'll definitely get it. There'll be other alt arts and from the era because some of the alt arts I would say are better than a lot of the illustration rares because some of the illustration rares have now, and like art rares, they've kind of start trending towards the generic art that we've kind of discussed in the background. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But a lot of them haven't stuck out like they have in the Sword and Shield era.
Yeah, and they're kind of given free reign. Like we have illustration rares, which are like pretty common, and art rares. And the artists are given free reign. So, like, even if it's totally amazing artwork, every art rare, in a way, to somebody is really amazing. So, it kind of wears off. That new feeling wears off. The excitement wears off. And it's just what happens, unfortunately. But with that being said, it's going to be interesting to see how the next couple of years go. I think we are kind of heading to a lull where people just want to flock to more superstars rather than stars or, water boys as CGC Junks Labs come in. Sell those water boys and get those superstars as is the play. And, since we follow the market and not like I'm constantly looking, I feel like I'm ahead of the trends for a lot of casual people. Us just being in the hobby to the level we are puts us above the trends of normal people, but I feel like I'm always like on the pulse of the changing markets because of how much I watch eBay, probably an unhealthy amount.
Well,
But
I do that with stuff that I'm financially invested in. I'll keep it a tabs in, obviously. But and on the cards that I'm looking at now, I'm looking at a lot of the first editions, but I'm also keeping an eye on the ponchos because what move I make will be dictated on if I sell the Elsa, which is a whole nother story. But anyways, constantly being aware, you start seeing trends. Like there's a trend that Nathan and I haven't seen with, for example, the D23 Mickey Mouse PSA 9. It bottomed out at like 750 or something like that in a PSA 9 about 6 weeks ago. Well, the trending suggests the market's going to normalize on it, which didn't make sense with the price it was going for when the PSA 10 Mickey's going for between 3 and 3,500. So it should at least be $1,000, at least you would think, right? Upwards to 1,500. Well, I think we're starting to see that correction because they're now selling for around $1,000 or a little bit under in auctions, and buy it nows are going for nearly $1,200. So it's definitely shifted back.
yeah,
I think some people are starting to realize. I also think that coincides with some of the early birds seeing that the money isn't in the set cards anymore.
yeah,
I think you've seen, which is what Nathan and I have also discussed. Like, will we see a reaction, kind of like how we saw with the Japanese promos, where it's a delayed reaction, where it takes almost 2 years for them to see that hype just go off? Maybe, but that's why I don't want to sell the Elsa unless I absolutely have to. That's why I'm making moves now, which I'll explain, to potentially hold on to it if I don't see it doesn't hit the price point that I'm thinking it should be at.
yeah. Yeah, it'll be a interesting episode for our next episode, talking about all these
Yeah,
plays and potentials. I really need to figure it out, but despite really wanting to keep the gold stars, like I'm just thinking of it as like a more of a financial play. Like it makes more sense to put it in like a first ed Zard or something, but
yeah,
we'll see. If I do that, I might never get the gold stars again, which would really suck. But if those go up to where they're unattainable, I would think that the thing that I put the money into would go up as well. So it's kind of a win-win either way. I just like looking at all the gold stars more because there's 27 of them
yeah.
rather than just one.
And so we've kind of discussed now, going back to the main topic. We sometimes explain other stuff, go off on tangents, but I think that's what creates for great conversation. But going back to, we've kind of identified the core history in terms of identifiable important moments in Pokemon TCG and overall with Pokemon in general. Now, what are some of your top moments personally, as we've kind of discussed the top moments in Pokemon?
Yeah, so we mentioned at the, before we recorded that we'll kind of keep this short and sweet. I think we had an episode way back where we did like our top 5 memories or top 5 moments, but this
No, I
is,
don't think moments. We did something like non-TCG items, and I think we did cards. I think we touched up on certain things.
yeah, it was a while back, like no
Yeah.
matter what it was, but yeah, just to quickly recap, you want to alternate one and the other, or do you want me to just kind of like
No,
name
we
all
can
5?
we can alternate starting from the very beginning.
So the very first one for me ties into that period of the release. It's basically my release experience, just having all the cards at school, getting in trouble for bringing cards, trading when you're waiting on the bus, stuff like that. But the thing that stands out most is me playing blue version. I remember going to some wedding in another town. It was dark out, like there were candles on the table. It was probably like too late for me to be out, so like my parents let me bring my Game Boy and just kind of play while we were at the wedding. And I remember like sitting off on a table like by myself, holding this
Loser.
holding this Game Boy at a angle to the candle that was on the table just so I could see the screen because this thing wasn't backlit. So yeah, I remember like knees sitting in the chair, elbows on the table, slight tilt so I could see that Game Boy screen with the candlelight. And I remember evolving my Charmeleon into a Charizard at that table, like on candlelight. So that was like the coolest experience. I like saw this dragon, I could barely see him. I'm like, what is that? And I remember like I can't wait till I get back home in the lights so I could see what this is. So that was like the peak memory. And the only other one kind of around that time, I remember pulling my first holo. It was a holo Ninetales. And somewhere there's a picture of me and my cousin pulling the cards that we bought our single pack with, like in my grandma's yard, like holding up our card that we just pulled. And it's a Ninetales for me. And then getting gold version. I remember it was like a birthday or a special event, or we were celebrating something. Or maybe it was just like an early Christmas. Like I was so excited to like play this game. And like my parents like surprised me with it one night. And it was like pretty late. And I was like, can I just check it out? And they like let me play it for like 15 minutes before bed. And it was like, I don't know, such an amazing memory. And I have those original games that I got back in the day. So sure the batteries on them are going to shit out any second. But still got my save files on them as long as they work. But that's my earliest one. What about you?
So for me, I know I've discussed it before, but I would say there's several moments that are associated with early Pokemon for me, but the main one has to be pulling the Zard, which I mentioned several times before. First 3 packs. We go into Toys R Us. We each get 3 packs from the big bin in Toys R Us. That's how they had them. It was like a big old bin of packs. I had all of my chose one of each artwork. And in the first 3 packs, I opened a Charizard. Screamed, top of my lungs. Couldn't believe it. Brother didn't get anything, Yeah, pretty much. And, that was in the car when we got back. I couldn't even wait till we got home. Now, there's also seen Pokemon the movie 2000. I remember going to see that movie, getting the card, and just being just in love with the ancient Mew, being like, I don't want to destroy it.
There has to be only like 5 of them in the world.
So I put it back in the packaging and like try to put it in my pocket and try to move as little as possible, so it didn't become bent.
Yeah, the child logic there is like instead of just holding this and moving it as little as possible, I'll just put it in my pocket and just walk really carefully.
I didn't want to. I was eating popcorn, so I didn't want to get it all buttery and stuff, right?
Yeah,
obviously I still have those.
I'm sure you're still wiping your hands on those pants. So.
It turned out to be an 8. Okay, I'm just saying, and that's actually pretty good considering the print quality of those ancient Mews. That is near mint and that is packed fresh. So I'll tell you what, I did something right.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Pristine pockets.
But that's definitely up there. I remember getting in trouble. Everybody remembers kind of how it was on the schoolyard. I remember getting in. A bunch of the kids got in trouble. I guess you could say I swindled the kid. I traded a Pikachu, which was obviously a common, for his Wigglytuff, which was a holo. And everybody was like, you got gypped, bro. And people, as soon as he was saying that, like, so he immediately went to the teacher, and like after recess, his teacher came into my class, and I had to give it back. And then the next day...
Did you get your Pikachu
Pokemon
back?
cards are banned. Yeah, I did. And it was like, Pokemon cards are banned. And then they had an event or something where everybody got to play Pokemon after school instead. But it was a dog-eat-dog world, if you remember. Recess, people were getting beat up. If there's ever a comedy that can be made, kind of like how they've done with some of the 80s retro stuff, it'd be interesting going back to that era because... there were a lot of issues, and I don't blame the cards being banned. And I chose blue, or I didn't have a choice as far as like the games. my brother, since he was older, they always like he got the first choice. He chose red. I got blue, and for I was able to choose for Johto. I chose gold, so I had the Ho-Oh version.
Yeah, I guess it was just me being weird, but I chose blue version. Like I liked Blastoise, the art more than the Charizard, and then I chose gold version. Or no, I don't think I chose. I think I was like I just want one of them or something, and my parents just happened to give me gold. Um, but yeah, those were my two games. The next memory for me doesn't really come along until, well, I guess there's one more from back in the day, which was kind of a pivotal moment, like when cards were like causing trouble in school. I had a bunch in the front pocket of my backpack, like the little pocket that sits up higher for like pens. And then they all got stolen one day. And we weren't really like, I don't think they were totally banned yet, but it was like, you can't have your Pokemon cards out. So like I was kind of nervous and I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, but pretty sure someone stole all those and I was so bummed. I remember there being a Black Star Entei reverse holo from the movie in there, and I think there was a Neo Lugia in there, but I remember nothing else. Like those two cards are what stood out to me. It was probably a stack of like 10 to 15 cards and that was it. And I just thought I had everything. Like I had all the good stuff, in my
Yeah,
10 cards there. And then when I got back into collecting, I remember like I just want a collection that's like better than the one I had when they got stolen. And I got a little 3-ring binder, filled up a couple pages. I'm like, I'm happy. But of course, I just kept going. Bought a complete base set for 60 something dollars. Bought, I think my first item that I bought on eBay was a Jolteon Hollow. When I was starting to collect Jungle and Fossil. So, yep, pretty wild.
I
My,
would say there's really, yeah.
I was just
No.
saying, like, those are really my only big memories from like way back then. And then my next one is like coming up when I got back into Diamond and Pearl. Did you have any in between there? Or were you pretty
Nope.
much.
There's nothing until 2016 for me.
So, yeah, I'll just kind of touch on them real quick. Pretty much just when I got a DS, everyone started bringing their own Game Boys. Like we were playing Gears of War 2 on Xbox. I was like really high ranked in that game for a game type. There was like 5 of us who played, and we played it way too much. It was purely based on game time, but like obviously, like if you were better, you get more points. But we would play that game all the time, and we were like ranked in the top, like all 5 of us, like top 100 in the world for a certain game type on there. So it was a lot that we played that game. But finally, when we got bored, we pulled out our Game Boys and like we started checking out our old Game Boy games on the Xbox party chat. So like we just literally stopped playing the game, stayed up chatting. I'm gonna bust out my Game Boy. Started bringing them to school. Started a trend, like all these people started playing their Game Boy games at lunch. We started like just battling and playing. At the time, shortly after that, like Diamond and Pearl had came out. So everyone started buying DSs and playing Diamond and Pearl, and everyone, like after starting that trend in high school, playing all those old games, everyone jumped on Diamond and Pearl, and that just kind of became a thing in itself. And my love for the video games and the hobby really, that's where it was really like sparked up again. Started buying Pokemon cards. Um, there was a set out at the time called Legends Awakened. Me and my buddy bought a booster box of that. You could buy a booster box of any of their most recent sets for $100, no problem. And we opened all those packs. I remember pulling a Dragonite from that set. It was like one of the coolest looking cards to me, just normal holo. And then yeah, I was totally hooked for that. But I remember collecting like a lot of cards in that period. I remember opening Secret Wonders, even going back to some of the EX eras because you could still find those on the shelves because nobody wanted them. So yeah, remember opening some Stormfront. I would go buy like a 3-pack blister of Stormfront, like, I don't know, multiple times a week and just crack those open. But it was wild times. I wish I would have collected more, kept more of those sealed. I think I remember looking up base set booster boxes at the time, and they were like $1,000 or $1,500. So things were definitely on the uptick, but nothing like they used to be.
No.
But then, yeah, casually collecting started to get a little more serious, and then Pokemon Go happened.
And for me, that's the next big moment is Pokemon Go. That's when, as I mentioned before, I got so involved in Pokemon Go. I play it. I couldn't play it during the day because the servers were down. But this was during the time period where I worked at. They usually closed down for a few weeks, and usually this month there are very few hours. I just kind of finished college, but going through the second time. And so I had a lot of free time on my hands, and I was playing till from like 11 or even 10 to like 4 or 5 a.m. and I just couldn't get enough Pokemon. And that's when like Amazon Prime or whatever. It was Amazon Prime or was it Netflix? I can't remember which. I think it was Amazon Prime, and they had Pokemon available and the XY version. And that's where I just fell in love with Pokemon all over again with Greninja. That's one reason why he's now one of my all-time favorites, probably my favorite starter. Top 2, maybe. I don't really, I don't necessarily have a favorite starter from Gen 1. Maybe Venusaur, I suppose. I know Charizard obviously has a nostalgic thing, but I don't have the same infatuation with Charizard nowadays. But that's when it was that year or like the year after, I actually bought a bunch of packs. It was a bunch of like evolutions. They were these 10s. We just opened. I opened it with my girlfriend and pulled like a Venusaur EX and a few other cards. And yeah, that's where, and then I continued playing Go a lot. And that was my main focus for years. And it was starting to wane down towards the end of 2019. And 2020, it was starting to wane down, but I still played it regularly. And then the pandemic happened. And then that's where I start going to other facets of life, getting back into photography, all that sort of thing. And barely played Pokemon Go whenever October of 2020 happened.
Yeah, that was some big times. That's where we actually met playing Pokemon Go. I would get off work. I was doing a weird evening shift where I'd go in at 2:30, get off at 10:30. And it just worked out perfectly because, like you said, couldn't even play on the servers because they were just so bad. Like, you couldn't even play until, like, midnight. I remember getting off sometimes, and, like, they would still be slow, but it would get better as, like, the early morning hours happened.
Mm-hmm.
But
Plus, it was too hot during that period, too.
Yeah, during the day, yeah, you couldn't, like, hardly play at all. But, yeah, I did that 5 days a week. I'd get off. I'd go to the park, walk around for a little bit. Then I'd go home, sleep, work, come out and do it again. Did that for a long time. But yeah, you and I were number 1 and 2 in town. So then we finally met on the campus steps there. I remember you getting there and like we discovered who each other were. And like
yeah.
that's just where we met, and now we're doing all this. So yeah, definitely was a great time for everybody, just the memories and, hanging out with people, just all sharing that same enjoyment, just like we had in the 90s. Like everyone was into the same thing at the same time, experiencing the same things, just kind of creates some powerful memories.
I remember a complete frat bro, like, he left the bar for a little bit. He was like, "There's a Butterfree over here. There's a Pikachu somewhere nearby too. I gotta catch this Butterfree."
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. I remember when a Gloom appeared also, and like 20 people went to go catch the Gloom. Like it was pretty fun. I Well, I'm interested to see what Pokemon might do for the 30th, and especially for Pokemon Go for its 10-year anniversary, which would be crazy by then. Um, who knows what they're going to have. I am thinking that's when they're going to increase the level cap is sometime around 2025 into 2026. So I think they're going to make it a big shebang. I'm hoping for this is kind of a side thing with Pokemon Go, but I'm hoping they bring back every event Pokemon as a reward for or during or at the Go Fest that year.
Yeah. It's sad though how Niantic has handled the game to me. Like
Yeah,
I just think they're in cruise control, just doing the bare minimum. Like the game could
which
be
they are.
just so much better.
I don't spend as much as I used to. It's probably an average of $80 a month now. I was spending a lot during the last event. It was like, a little bit more than $80 a month to buy eggs because the event they have for the XP. I'm trying to hit like 700 million because I think the level 60 will be around 670 million. So I'm just trying to get to that XP benchmark. I'm only at like 550 right now.
Yeah.
550 million XP. That's pretty good for taking a whole year off and then have another 8 months where I barely play. What do you say?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I'm
Well,
still
and
somehow
and 80
number one
bucks a month
found.
is like quite a bit for a
Uh,
mobile game.
people spend that on going out to eat. Within, I don't do that. I don't go out to eat hardly ever. Maybe once a month, if that.
Yeah,
But people do
relative
that
to
on
other
food.
things, but relative to how
But
much most people spend on mobile games, like it's quite a bit.
yeah, but I also don't play like PlayStation or Xbox.
Yeah,
So I
that's
mean,
kind of like the
so
only
it's
game you play. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like how much is one game now? 70, $80. I think I heard rumors where GTA 6 is going to be potentially 120, 150. So, I mean, $80 a month considering I also walk a lot and I use it to stay active. I mean, I don't think it's really that much, honestly. But that's my
Yeah,
New Year
relative to like
resolutions.
what you get out of it specifically and how much you played and have played, like yeah, it's not too bad.
No.
I just
And I
wish
mean,
like I would occasionally put money into it, but now it's like I don't know, just with the game and like how they've handled things, like I don't trust them enough to even really care that much. So like I'm still actively playing like if I'm out and about, but I don't go out of my way to play or I don't like buy things. It's like, well, I'll get level 50 eventually. Cuz
I
instead of
don't
going hard for like a year and getting level 50, it's like I'll just casually play and not worry about it for like longer because I'll always be playing the game to some extent, I think,
yeah,
just
like
because of
I don't
nostalgia.
grind like I used to. Like even on certain community days, I might play only an hour. I play consistent though. I play 30 minutes before work. That helps wake me up, gets my mind fluid, gets me alert, gets me ready to embrace the day, if you will. And then I might play maybe 20 to 30 minutes after work. So that's and then yeah, I do have like my plus on at work, and I'll momentarily check to see if it's hooked up. But I mean, that's about how consistent I play. And on the weekends, it's with that same a time amount. So I mean, maybe an hour a day, actual out and about playing, if that. And then yeah, I know but that's really that amount is actually a very common amount that from what I've seen locally, how much people play in a day. Even a lot of the casuals play about 30 minutes to an hour a day.
Yeah. Well, the people you're talking about the game with are not like casuals. Even the most casual people that
Some
you're
of them
talking
are.
to in the groups are not really casuals.
Eh,
Like the
I
casuals you
would
don't
identify them as
hear
casuals.
about.
I
They're
don't know.
casual to
I
you,
mean,
yeah, but
you've been casual long enough. People eventually get to know who you are.
yeah.
But
Yeah, it's interesting. I just wish they could improve on some stuff, but like I feel like aside from megas, like it's just the same game I've been playing.
event shinies, they have started adding new elements. Showcases is one of them, which is pretty neat, and then routes, which is also pretty neat. Both of them do have their issues, but they've started to flesh them out, and I hope they work on those and expand those things going forward. I would like to see something for more hardcore players for showcases like that as well. Like get involved, catch so many Pokemon during this hour. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
something along those lines. There's elements that they can do to make it better. But we'll see how they build on these.
Yeah, and then like I don't know, some of
And
the
then
battling,
the
like
final
I just hate that.
aspect for me is a recent one. Literally happened last week. That was buying the PSA 9 Mario Pikachu.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's a pretty big step in the journey, starting from scratch again. And pretty wild. I'm trying to think of any other recent ones I had. But yeah, I guess another thing of mine was kind of Pokemon Go related, like kind of when I sold my first account and it was like good for me putting a little distance from like being on my phone cuz like if I would have kept going like I was going hardcore again and hit level 40, like I went from like level 32 to level 40 and like very quickly. And I think I still went pretty hard and got like 100 mil XP eventually that summer. But it was just too much for me, and I just cut the cord, sold the account. Then it took like multiple years for me to even like start again with the one I play on now. But kind of wish like now that I'm just casually playing that I would have had all that XP on like the same account, but it's like I would have just kept playing like pretty unhealthy way if I would have just not cut that cord. And I wanted to put more money into like Pokemon and stuff too, so like cards. But yeah, for nostalgic reasons, I'm just casually playing and no rush to do anything. It's just more of a nostalgic trip to spend my time. But and then obviously you had to wrap up my stuff, 2020, and the price craze, and me having all those cards beforehand. You know, people tell me I got lucky, or like, oh, well, you're lucky because you had the cards before. It's like I was putting money into cards that were like worth nothing to hardly anybody. Like it was a huge risk that we were just purely buying cards out of the love for what it was. And there was no talks of money, prior to like 2018. So it was just a different world. So people see it as luck. I see it as like just risk and like ultimately kind of wasting money because like, yeah, they kind of held their value, but you're just throwing money into like a collectible that you're pretty much doing on your own or like very, very niche amount of people. So, but yeah, that's pretty much all my defining moments.
So I would say for me, there's obviously going into 2020. First thing I heard was Logic selling his card, and then there was what was it? There was two first edition Charizard sales, and then the first edition booster box. I think is what it was. And then that's when I remember you were contacting me. You were wanting to look at my cards. I was like, I'd probably never sell those cards, but they are near mint. And then, I found out like some of them were generally near mint, some of them weren't because they were in plastic sleeves, unprotected. Um, but anyways, I found those cards, and we started talking about some stuff, and I started going to Walmart's, Targets, anywhere, everywhere, and I got in about 2 weeks before everybody else did, and that 2 weeks helped set me up to where I am today now with things, being able to eventually get to the point with Lorcana, being able to get that. Like, yeah, I made some mistakes entering the hobby, multiple mistakes that I've mentioned several times, but overall, I got the ball rolling to where we are today. And getting into the hobby from 2020 is what allowed me to, just this past week, finally get the PSA 9 Mario Pikachu that I've been after for years. I finally got it.
Yep. I finally graded all my stuff. Next year's going to be another milestone for me because I'll pretty much have graded everything that I want to grade, and I'll be really thinking about what to sell and stuff like that. I honestly probably really need to go through my binders and find all my minty cards that are worth grading because there are some ones in there worth grading. So that could be another play and would really set me up good. Like, pretty sure my Charizard base set is like PSA 8-ish range. Like, I don't need that for a binder collection. Like, I need like PSA 4 or 5. Like, but yeah, it's gonna be pretty awesome. Next episode, we'll go into details with all that. But I think that pretty much wraps up the main topic. Felt like we hit stuff pretty good. Logan Paul was something we didn't mention. That was obviously another key moment of the hobby that just kind of goes into 2020. 2020 was just like a perfect storm. Like, we need to do another episode on like the impact of 2020 now that we're like totally out of that hype market. Like, in a couple months from now or next summer, if we're still in a low point, like where we've
Be like
seen the
4 years
cycle,
removed.
yeah, we should like revisit that topic because
I think
it's just perfect storm.
And we've mentioned before again how 2024, a lot of people will have it on the rear view. People won't really be paying attention to it. I think 2024 might be the last great window to potentially get in on some cards before. I'm not saying it's going to happen in 2025 even, but if you look at kind of 2020, how cards were starting to trickle up a little bit towards the end of 2019. I think you probably have into a decent chunk in 2025, but by then I think you're going to see them on the rise. Maybe not too far off from their lows, but you're going to start seeing them on the rise sometime in 2025. And by 2026, especially after the Pokemon Presents in 2026 to celebrate the 30-year anniversary, I think you're going to see things starting to take off by then. So essentially, you're talking by the end of the year 2025.
Yeah. For sure. Guess we'll pretty much wrap it up then. I did have a question that would take like 2 seconds if you want to hit that real quick.
Yeah.
This was actually from the old card shop on YouTube. They uploaded a video of their podcast, and I listened to quite a few of them. But they had an interesting question. If you could, there's all kind of, they worded it like this. There's all kinds of animals out in the world, right? Some we eat, some we kill, some we are protected because they're endangered. But if there was one Pokemon, a Pokemon were real, that you would want to eat, what would it be? And what would be one that you would never try?
Well, I guess it'd be a Miltank, right? Or a Tauros.
They said Tauros too, yeah, like a Tauros steak. It's like a prime.
Either, as far as, I don't eat a whole lot of red meat. I mean, I'll eat like a burger. Don't get me wrong. For our anniversary, I had a big old steak, like a 20-ounce steak or something like that. Like, I'll definitely eat beef. It's just, I try not to eat it because of its correlation with Alzheimer's and my family history with that. But anyways, I'll eat a lot of turkey as well and chicken. So I'm trying to think of ones that would fit that boat. And I'm off the top of my head, I'm not seeing a lot of. I can't think of a lot. Because Pidove is like your pigeon, Spearow is like your sparrow.
Is there a straight up chicken Pokemon? Like, why?
That's what I'm trying to think.
Why am I having a hard time thinking of this? Have they never made a chicken
or a turkey? They got stuff like,
they made like unpheasant and stuff like that for like pheasants and all that, but
pheasants. A lot of people hunt pheasants.
Like, has there never been a straight up just chicken Pokemon? I guess Combuskin comes up, so like.
Oh yeah,
that's kind of Torchic, Combuskin, Blaziken, but like, that's not like a chicken. They like stand up on 2 feet.
Well, and
don't have like wings. They're more like a fighting
weird
type.
Because the final evolve of them are like, they would kill you. So
like Torchic to me kind of fits the chicken part, but like the fully grown chicken, they kind of went away.
We have deer, so you have your Stantler.
Yeah, I would like to eat first that comes to mind for me was the Tauros, like yesterday when I listened, and then obviously, but then I didn't think of Miltank, but Yeah, Tauros would be a nice one. I feel like they'd be like the Wagyu beef version.
Wagyu beef
Wagyu or
or
whatever.
is that
Yeah.
how? Yeah.
One I wouldn't like to eat, so it was funny. Like they were thinking of like these food-ish Pokemon that they wouldn't like to eat. So like they were mentioning that they hate urchins and stuff like that, so they would not eat like a
Ammonite.
Onite, or what's the
Chem-
quillfish. Like he was like,
oh
I
yeah.
would never eat a quillfish. And I just thought it was funny, like they were still mentioning like food potential Pokemon. And all I could think of is like, well, I wouldn't really want to eat a Grimer or a Garbodor. Like those are kind of what came to mind for me. I'm sure a Grimer would probably be the worst one.
Well, the first one that comes to mind for me is what was the first one that came to? Oh yeah, an Eevee.
Yeah.
That was the first thing that came to mind to me.
Yeah, my mind just goes to the Garbodor, Trubbish, Muck, Grimer. Like, yeah, I wouldn't want to eat any of that.
Well, yeah, if you look up the origin, like they're literally toxic sludge.
Yeah.
Like, so you'd have a rough time there. You'd probably even die.
If it was like an edible food that I wouldn't want to eat, then yeah, urchin. I wouldn't really want to try a quillfish or
And I'm not even, or a Kabuto.
yeah, or an octillery. Like I would not really care for octopus.
No.
But with that, let us know if you're still listening. What food you would like to eat. But I guess we can wrap it up there. Unless you got any last comments.
No, I sure don't.
All right, guys. Well, it's been a really fun one. I feel like it's always fun, like going back and living the memories. I think the next one's going to be really fun too. So we hope to see you guys in that one. We'll be talking about our 2024 goals, and we'll be talking about a lot of the moves we're planning on making, and not making. But I guess we will see y'all then. Thanks for listening, guys.
Until next time, peace.